listening to the WrestleHavoc Podcast on YouTube, where we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. We talk all that goes on in the realm of WWE and AEW every week. And now, here's your host, the one that will give you a reality check on pro wrestling, Flamin' Ricky DeReyes. This is the WrestleHavoc Podcast.
After 10 long months, the Second City Saint himself, CM Punk, has officially made his return to All Elite Wrestling. What is up, everybody? It is Flamin' Ricky DeReyes, right here on the AEW, the first AEW Collision review from June 17th, 2023. As I stated at the top of the review, CM Punk is officially back in AEW, and we got a lot of things to talk about right here on the Collision review. We're going to be talking about CM Punk's promo that I'd like to call a pipe bomb promo, because there was a lot of shit that he said in that promo that definitely caught my eye and caught a lot of people's eyes. Of course, also, CM Punk teamed up with FTR. CMFTR is reunited, and they faced off against the current Ring of Honor World Television Champion Samoa Joe and Bullet Club Gold's Switchblade Jay White and Juice Robinson. The atmosphere at the United Center in Chicago was absolutely in-fucking-sane, man. The crowd was just eating everything up when it came to this show. Now, was this show a good show? Absolutely. I enjoyed this show for what it was. This show did everything that it needed to do for first impression's sake. That is really the best explanation that I can give you for this first Collision show. It did everything that it needed to do for those first impressions for either the newer viewers, of course, of Collision, or the new viewers that are just tuning in to AEW, because the biggest takeaway that I can have for this show was the fact that AEW Collision is everything that AEW Rampage needed to be. And now it looks like we got our true B show when it comes to AEW Collision. But if you really think about it, I feel like they could be on the verge to possibly, I'm going to go out on a limb and say this, they could be on the verge of possibly being the actual A show for AEW. I may be totally wrong, maybe within 3 months, but we're going to have to wait and see where this show goes. But great first impression when it comes to AEW Collision. The CM Punk return, everybody is talking about it. Literally, AEW Collision is trending worldwide. Everything about the show was fantastic. You know, there were some things on the show that I didn't like, but very minor stuff. But overall, man, this show was absolutely great for what it was. Of course, we had CM Punk, the trios match. We had Toni Storm and Ruby Soho taking on Willow, Nightingale, and Sky Blue. Guys like Andrade made his return and had a fantastic and an intense match against the House of Black's Buddy Matthews. Miro made his return, so he made his intentions clear. No Thunder Rosa on the show. We had a video package of Scorpio Sky, so they're definitely teasing their upcoming returns to Collision. And a lot of things interesting as we're headed, of course, to Forbidden Door heading next Sunday on pay-per-view. Of course, that is going to be taking place at the Scotiabank Arena in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Roughly around 9,000 people were at the United Center for this Collision premiere. Not a sellout for AEW Collision. I think it's pretty well documented that the tickets, especially for the Canadian tour in AEW, are not selling well, primarily for those Collision shows, man. You know, those Collision numbers, man, in Canada are not doing well. So hopefully, as we head towards those shows, you know, the momentum can maintain itself when it comes to Collision. But we're going to be talking about all that and much more right here on the Collision review. But before I get into all this craziness regarding AEW Collision, make sure to like and subscribe to the WrestleHavoc Podcast right here on YouTube, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content, and as the frickin' referee would say, ring, ring, ring that damn bell for more notifications. Also, the WrestleHavoc Podcast is also available on audio platforms. It is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, and Google Podcasts. So if you guys want to listen to the WrestleHavoc Podcast in audio format, it is available on all of those platforms. And if you guys had missed it, of course, I uploaded this morning an extra of CM Punk and his ESPN interview that dropped, and I talk about, once again, how the wrestling media looks absolutely stupid. I've been getting a boatload of comments. Now, really, if you think about it, if you guys watch other channels, I'm probably not getting as much comments as other people would, but that is all right for me. But I've been getting a shit ton of comments about this whole video, as well as a shit ton of views, for my amount standards at least. But we're getting there. The viewership on this video is actually doing very well, and hopefully you guys can give it a watch. The link will be in the description below. Of course, I talk about a lot of things. I go through the entirety of the ESPN interview that was dropped with CM Punk, and I talk about how it really wasn't as big of a deal as the wrestling media made it out to be. So I talk about that and much more on that WrestleHavoc Podcast extra. The link will be in the description below, as well as the SmackDown review. Of course, the SmackDown review is up on the channel as well. SmackDown happened, of course, yesterday, or at the time that you guys are possibly watching this video 2 days ago. I talk about the bloodline being no more and Jey Uso choosing his side, and it's not with Roman Reigns, it's with his twin brother, Jimmy Uso. An amazing, amazing, amazing moment that transpired this past Friday on SmackDown. And it is now official. We are going to be getting Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa taking on the Usos at Money in the Bank at the O2 Arena in London. The Bloodline Civil War will implode and will escalate at Money in the Bank. It is going to be absolute insanity. And WWE actually posted a graphic, a poster of the whole match that's going to be taking place. And let me tell you, man, that poster is fucking badass. But if you guys haven't checked out the SmackDown review, the link will also be in the description below. All right, now let's get back into AEW Collision. We're going to be starting off, of course, with CM Punk. But before I talk about CM Punk, we're going to be talking about some aesthetics when it comes to this show. Now, one of my biggest complaints when it came to AEW Rampage was really the main reason was the fact that the show was not treated as important as Dynamite, in my opinion. And really after a couple of months after Rampage first premiered back in 2021, Rampage eventually became a skippable show, and it was really a show that you really did not miss anything about. Really, the only thing, you would be pissed if you missed something on Dynamite, but if you really missed something on Rampage, unless it was at least live, I mean, let's be real here, you would miss nothing at all when it came to Rampage. And that was really the biggest problem. Rampage was a show that eventually AEW just didn't give a single flying fuck about at the end of the day. And I know Tony Khan may say differently, and he says, I very care much a lot about Rampage, but let's be honest with ourselves. The ratings have shown Rampage is just not, it just didn't work at all. It was basically an extension of Dynamite, and if you think about it, it was technically a third hour of Dynamite. So all bets are off when it comes to AEW Saturday Collision, and everything about Collision that we saw tonight was everything that it needed to be. It was everything that AEW Rampage needed to be as well. They had a different set. Now, I personally, since AEW Collision, the logo of AEW Collision that is like right below here, right below me, of course, it is a inspiration. It's a takeaway inspiration, not a copy. And I know a lot of people have been throwing the word, oh my God, they're copying WCW. I don't view it that way. The AEW Collision logo, of course, is a tribute, in my opinion, to the old WCW Monday Nitro logo from 1995 through 1999, because in 1999, they changed, of course, the classic WCW logo into the fucking shitty star logo. Whatever. That logo actually is a kind of guilty pleasure on my end. I actually kind of like that logo, but that's another story for another time. But the logo itself looks awesome. I love it. Everybody expected that we were going to be getting a Nitro-esque set for, a modern take of the Nitro set when it came to Collision, but that was not the case, unfortunately. But the set was still different, and it was still a bunch of LED screens, but they made it into a way that kind of blended into the theme of Collision, which I absolutely liked. The commentary team. The commentary team is Kevin Kelly and Nigel McGuinness, as well as Jim Ross. Now, Jim Ross, what he's going to be doing, from what I assume, throughout the rest of the weeks when it comes to Collision, is basically he's only going to be calling the main events, which I think is the perfect position for JR. But JR had an incident. I believe he fell, and he actually posted a photo on his social media that he had a black eye on. And I believe this was like probably, I don't know how many times this happened to JR, but this has been happening multiple times. So my thoughts and prayers go out to JR. I know, it was probably not one of the best of his days, but he was still at the show. And in the main event, he didn't really sound as good as we know JR for being. But that is not on JR. I know he had a tough night, but hopefully he can get through it at the end of the day. But nonetheless, what are my thoughts on the commentary team? Of course, Kevin Kelly and Nigel McGuinness. I absolutely love Nigel McGuinness. I think he brings a professional sports-centric feel when it comes to a pro wrestling show. And I say that because of the fact that he's a guy that has actually been in the ring, because he has a wrestling career before, but unfortunately he had to retire. And he really gives that, professional type feel. The same thing as Kevin Kelly. I think Kevin Kelly was great. Of course, I believe he does do commentary for New Japan Pro Wrestling. And I do think he did also do commentary at the first Forbidden Door show last year as well. And I even praised Kevin Kelly as well. He was absolutely phenomenal at what he did. Now, at first, when it came to Kevin Kelly and Nigel McGuinness, I kind of, wasn't really too comfortable with listening to them speak, even though they blended well with one another. At first, they were kind of struggling a little bit, but later on, as you head towards the show, forward down the show, they eventually started to kind of, blend and mesh and got comfortable in their position. I can remember there would be times in the show where Kevin Kelly would forget that commercial break was, about to happen, and he didn't say anything about a commercial break, and they immediately went to commercial break. Or, Kevin Kelly would say, oh, we're about to go to a picture-in-picture commercial break, and then the action would still go on. Stuff like that. But eventually, they got comfortable in their positions, and eventually, things played out for the best. So, Kevin Kelly and Nigel McGuinness, I think that's a great commentary combination for a show like Collision, because, again, it's different from Dynamite. I'm tired of Excalibur, and I like Excalibur, but man, Tony Khan, if you're watching this, you need to give this poor man a raise. Every time when they would run down the card for next week, man, it's like Excalibur is just like trying to get his last breath. Like, Jesus Christ, man, this guy is just speeding with all the things that he is saying. It is insane. But it's great that Excalibur is not on commentary, because I feel like he has a lot of work cut out for him, of course, on Dynamite, and I believe on Rampage as well. But nonetheless, the commentary team for Collision is great. The camera work, the production of Collision felt different as well. It felt more like a sports-centric show, if that makes any sense. I don't know if that has to do with the colors of the show, but I thought the aesthetic and the overall presentation of Collision definitely stood out on its own, and it made itself different from AEW Dynamite. So those are my thoughts on that. AEW, hats off to them. They definitely hit a home run when it came to the look and feel of AEW Collision. But we're gonna start, we're gonna dive deep into the show. This show kicks off, of course, with the return of CM Punk, the best in the world. Of course, this is in Chicago at the United Center, and we got a bunch of CM Punk chants. CM Punk comes out with a pair of boots, and of course, he comes out with a bag. It looks like a belt bag. What could that be? And we get a bunch of CM Punk chants by the crowd, man. The crowd was just absolutely apeshit for this man. Everybody talked about mixed reactions that Punk was going to be getting in Chicago primarily, and we all knew it was going to be an overall positive reaction. The biggest test is going to be when they go to those Canadian markets for Collision and their other cities, for example, like Newark, New Jersey, which I'm going to be attending that Collision show as well. It's going to be very interesting to see what is going to be going down. But CM Punk, of course, takes the AEW logo cube out of the microphone, so the microphone is just one sole microphone. And he begins to cut his promo. And he says he doesn't know if you guys heard, but he's tired of being nice. Gone 10 months with a ruptured tricep tendon torn straight out of the bone, but he is still here. And as long as he is still here, this is the professional wrestling business. It is a business of grown-ups. It's never been a popularity contest. We know he pretty much would have lost that a long time ago. So tonight, he wants to have a little conversation about the future, but first, he would like to have a little conversation about the past, which he doesn't think is checkered. If you would have told a 15-year-old him that he was going to sell out the Budokan, sell out Madison Square Garden, that he would sell out every single building in Chicago with the Roop, well, he isn't sure a little punker would have believed him. But that's because he did not experience what President him experienced in front of all of you crazy bastards. He is tired of being nice. Tell me when I'm telling lies, and that is a common line that he states in this promo. He did all these things. He got to this place waving a smart, with a bunch of smart, passionate wrestling fans like all of us. And oh God, he'd never fit in more than he had in his entire life than he had here in professional wrestling. He loves us for it, and he loves us because we love him. And we love him because he never compromised. He is non-apologetic, and he is him. And he couldn't do this without all of us. But it seems that there are some people that hate him for the same reasons why we all love him. Listen, he understands that the sheer magnitude of him makes people uncomfortable. And he very much understands that his mere presence makes people uncomfortable. But that's because he is the truth. And the truth is painful. And after he says the truth is painful, the crowd in Chicago proceeds to chant, "Fuck the elite." So you know this shit's real when the crowd in Chicago, that is a very pro CM Punk crowd, is chanting, "Fuck the elite." God damn. I mean, I was at Prudential Center, and I talked about this previously in other videos. I constantly said this. I was at Prudential Center, and my section particularly, and other sections right next to mine at Prudential Center, we chanted "Fuck CM Punk" when the elite were wrestling Death Triangle. So basically, Chicago had that same energy, but it was the opposite. It was for the elite. After that, he points at many different signs, and he says, "This sign right here says CM Punk is his hero. You can call me that. This sign right here says Pepsi Phil. You can call me that. This sign right here says CM Junk. You can call me that. You can boo me, you can cheer me, and you can hate me. But you all do it because you know I am right. You can call him whatever you want, but you know what David Zaslav calls him? If you guys do not know who David Zaslav is, of course, he is the president and CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery. He says, you want to know what David Zaslav calls him? One Bill Phil. That is because he is the true, genuine article in a business full of counterfeit bucks. Let me repeat that. That is because he is the one true, genuine article in a business full of counterfeit bucks. Full of counterfeit bucks. Shots fired. Absolutely shots fired. Now, the Young Bucks, what's interesting about this is the Young Bucks actually went on Twitter. And usually when it comes to the Young Bucks and their Twitter profiles, the Young Bucks tend to put stuff on their stores, and they always change up their bios all the time. And you want to know what the Bucks put on their Twitter bios? They stated, and I quote, "If it were 2018, we'd already have a quote-unquote counterfeit Bucks shirt available on ProWrestlingTees.com. Kill it, y'all." Which is very much true, because I can remember, I believe it was a couple of years before AEW started, WWE sent the Young Bucks a cease and desist, and they ended up putting out a shirt called Cease and Desist. So that was absolutely hilarious, but shots fired right there. And after that, Punk winks. And then he says, "The king is back, baby." And he does have a lot of things to get off his chest, but he has a question, Chicago. Why would I change? This is what Joe Strummer trained me for. He always speaks the truth to power, always to be yourself, and he will never compromise. And there is the people that think that they're owed an apology. He's grown older and wiser in his years, and sometimes it's better to just be the better man, the bigger man, I should say. If you feel you're here today and you owe me an apology, or I should owe you an apology, here it is. He is sorry that the only people softer than you are the wrestlers you like. Ah, man, Petty Phil. Petty Phil. You love to see it. He is sorry that the only people softer than you are the wrestlers you like. Damn. Nothing truer has been said by the one and only Phil Brooks, CM Punk. Tell him when he's telling lies. The last time we saw him, it was he had his tricep meat hanging down, and he held what was in this bag above his head. It's not because he deserved it. It's because he earned it. And it's not because he had the best dog collar match. It's because he won that dog collar match. Tell him when he's telling lies. This belongs to him until someone pins or submits him for it. And there are those who he is sure that were praying to whatever God that they believe in, that he was going to put these down and walk into the sunset never to be seen again. But until there is someone in this company that can fill these boots, they belong on his feet. Tell him when he's telling lies. Mic drop. And that was the opening promo that CM Punk cut on the debut episode of AEW Collision. Holy fucking shit. This was insane. This was a great promo. Now, I talked about this on the Dynamite review, and I talked about how, Punk says that he's going to get a lot of things off his chest. And he did get a lot of things off his chest. Primarily the things that people are going to be talking about is the shot towards the Young Bucks, calling them counterfeit Bucks, and of course, the AEW World Championship. Primarily that bag. What was in that bag was 100% the AEW World Championship. Could AEW be on the verge of telling the story of CM Punk basically holding the title that he never lost? Because if you think about it, that title was vacated from Punk. And if you really think about it, that belt was actually stripped off of Punk. But if none of the whole bullshit that happened at All Out happened, that belt would have been vacated anyway. So could they be on the verge of telling the story that Punk is going to be holding on to the AEW World Championship, but he is not the real AEW World Champion? Think about it. And he mentioned the dog collar match. That is a shot towards MJF. Could we be seeing a CM Punk and MJF match down the line? Yes, I genuinely believe we are. Do I think it's going to be happening now? No. When do I think it's going to be happening? I think it's going to be happening at the end of 2024. Because what happens in the end, or at the end of 2023? Well, at the end of 2023, of course, we are reaching the bidding war of 2024. And of course, basically, what I would assume would be the plan is for MJF to kayfabe leave AEW with the AEW World Heavyweight Championship, similarly to what Punk planned on doing back in 2011 during the 2011 Summer of Punk. And then you lead towards maybe a title versus title match. See, this is actually a very creative thing to go about it, because I've been hearing a lot of people on social media say that, CM Punk needs to have another run in being the actual AEW World Champion. Absolutely not. I don't think you should put that belt on Punk anytime soon. Don't get it confused with the belt that Punk is holding. The belt that Punk is holding is the AEW World title, but it's not the actual AEW World title because he is not the actual champion. But what I'm saying is you can create a story. If Punk is going to be exclusive to Collision, maybe he can, walk around and calling himself the AEW World Champion because he never lost that title. Who knows? We could be on the verge of them telling that story. But we're going to have to wait and see what goes down. But the other is the Young Bucks. Now, of course, he took that shot calling the Young Bucks counterfeit Bucks. And when he said counterfeit Bucks, you already knew who it was geared towards. And the Young Bucks even replied to that in their Twitter bios. Could we be on the verge of AEW doing the Elite versus CMFTR match maybe at a show like All In? I have no idea. I believe, yes, they will eventually do a program like that. But as we saw on that ESPN interview that dropped yesterday with CM Punk, it looks like Punk wants to hash things out with the Elite, but he hasn't been allowed to talk to anybody. So really, if you think about it, things haven't really been hashed out. So what is going to be happening? We're just going to have to wait and see what the future tells us, because at this point, the future, looks, I don't want to say bleak for that possibility of that program even happening, but it's just a matter of, us just having to wait and see what happens and see what transpires. What's very interesting about this is, of course, this Collision premiere took place at the United Center. Dynamite this Wednesday is going to be taking place in Chicago, I believe at the Wintrust Arena as well. So I believe the Bucks are booked for that show. I may be wrong. I may be totally wrong, and I forgot the lineup for next week's Dynamite. But if the Bucks eventually show up, which I don't know if they will, the reaction is going to be very interesting, especially after this Punk promo. But everything that Punk said was fantastic. Very much, if you think about it, this was kind of a heelish promo, if you really think about it. We had the bald CM Punk. I talked about how Punk needed to come in as a heel, and I still think he should come in as a heel. Right now, he's not right now a heel, but he kind of has the makings of possibly, maybe turning heel in the near future. But if you think about it, this is Chicago. Chicago is a pro CM Punk crowd. What is going to happen when we go to Canada for these next couple of weeks of Collision? Canada is going to be no man's land, ladies and gentlemen, so we're definitely going to be keeping an eye on the reactions when it comes to CM Punk. All right, after that, in our first match of Collision, we got Wardlow taking on Luchasaurus for the TNT Championship. I'm going to be brutally honest with you guys. A lot of people liked this match. I thought this match was okay. I thought this match was fine. Was it the best match that Wardlow had? No. Was it the best match that Luchasaurus had? No. Was this the best TNT match that I've ever saw? No. But it was an okay match, and it was a fine opener to kick off Collision. Both no-sell each other. We get a drop kick by Wardlow. Luchasaurus goes to the outside. Christian Cage later on gets chased on by Wardlow, and he proceeds to go under the ring. Wardlow tries to basically drag him out, but then Christian grabs his boot later on by coming back out from under the ring. Luchasaurus then hits a boot, but then Wardlow gets sent to the steel steps. We then get a cover by Luchasaurus, and then we get a cover and a near fall. We then get an overhand shot by Luchasaurus, but then Luchasaurus goes for a series of body shots. Wardlow runs into a boot by Luchasaurus. Once we're back from commercial break, Luchasaurus is up on the shoulders of Wardlow. Wardlow drops him down, and then Wardlow goes for repeated clotheslines. Wardlow then takes Luchasaurus into the corner, but then Wardlow spears through Luchasaurus as well once again into the corner. After that, he ends up hitting the spine buster. Wardlow goes to the top, but then Luchasaurus comes in and drops down Wardlow. He proceeds to grab Wardlow, and he chokeslams him down to the mat. We then get a cover by Luchasaurus and a near fall, but then Luchasaurus proceeds to grab Wardlow once again, and Wardlow ends up biting the hand of Luchasaurus, and then Luchasaurus ends up going for a back elbow. Wardlow goes for the headbutt, and then we get a clothesline by Wardlow. He then sends up the Powerbomb Symphony, but then Christian Cage is on the apron. Wardlow hits the Powerbomb, and Cage once again is on the apron. Christian Cage then takes out a chair. Wardlow gets caught into a chokeslam, but then we get a cover by Luchasaurus and another near fall. Wardlow then takes Luchasaurus, and then he drives him down with a slam. Wardlow goes to the top, and then he ends up hitting the Swanton off the top. After that, Cage is on the steel steps with the distraction. Wardlow hits repeated right hands on Luchasaurus, but then Luchasaurus ends up escaping. At this point, the referee is distracted, and Christian Cage grabs one of the cameraman's cameras and basically smashes it onto the head of Wardlow. Luchasaurus then comes in, and he plants Wardlow down to the mat, and we get a cover. 1, 2, 3, and Wardlow eventually basically beat, or I should say Luchasaurus beat Wardlow for the TNT Championship. What are my thoughts on this match? Overall, this was an okay match, not the best match that I've seen. Certainly not the best match of the whole night, in my opinion. That honor goes to the main event. Or if you really want to argue with me, if you say that Buddy Matthews versus Andrade was possibly the best match of the night, I can't really blame you for that either. This wasn't really the best opening match for a show. Like, if you compare it to, like, Christian Cage versus Kenny Omega on the first ever Rampage in Pittsburgh, the hype around it is completely different. What are my thoughts on Luchasaurus winning the TNT Championship? It's great for a guy like Luchasaurus, and it possibly sets the stage for somebody like Jack Perry to possibly dethrone Luchasaurus after he has his dominant run with the TNT Championship. That is what I see happening. But Jesus Christ, poor Wardlow. Poor fucking Wardlow, man. How many times has he has to lose the TNT Championship? Just seriously, how many times does he have to lose the TNT Championship, man? There's so much shit going on with Wardlow, like, creatively, that is just not good whatsoever. Like, Powerhouse Hobbs' world title, TNT title run just made no sense whatsoever. You know, Wardlow won that title at Revolution only to lose a couple of days later on Dynamite, and then Powerhouse Hobbs' title run ended up being meaningless. Like, it was just ridiculous. What happens to Wardlow now? Where's he going to go onto the card? Do I think he's going to be shifted towards the main event scene? Absolutely not. I do not see that being the case. But, you know, the biggest thing, in my opinion, that saved this match was the crowd. And thankfully, throughout the majority of this whole show, the crowd was just on their feet for everything. And they were absolutely loving Wardlow throughout the majority of this whole match. But Luchasaurus is your new TNT champion. After that, we have Andrade El Idolo. Yes, Andrade El Idolo, making his return to All Elite Wrestling, taking on one of the AEW World Trios champions, a part of the House of Black, Buddy Matthews. If there's any word that I can describe this match, is intense. This match was absolutely intense, and I mean that word to the fullest of my extent. This match was insane. The spots and the strikes that both of these men hit on each other were unlike any other strikes that I've ever seen in my entire life. And I may be over-exaggerating, but I'm just telling the God's honest truth. I mean, that back elbow by Andrade on fucking Buddy Matthews, you felt that real quick. You know, even in the main event, Samoa Joe with those chops on CM Punk, those were furious-ass chops. And when Punk tried to chop back, wasn't nearly as impactful as the chops that Punk or that Joe delivered. But I'll talk about Joe and Punk later on, because I actually want to talk about that as well. But let's go through the match. We get a bunch of welcome back chants by the crowd. So the crowd is absolutely loving Andrade El Idolo. Both lock up. We get a shoulder tackle no-sold by Andrade. Both lock up once again. We then get a shoulder tackle no-sold by Buddy Matthews. Andrade pushes Buddy Matthews. We then get a side headlock takeover. We get a bunch of side headlock takeover reversals. After that, we get a side shoulder tackle by Andrade, but then Andrade runs the ropes and proceeds to show off. Buddy gets taken into the corner. We then get a drop kick by Andrade. At this point, Julia Hart is trying to grab the skull that is in the steel steps. I believe it was a mask. I believe it was Andrade's mask. Both men are on the apron. Andrade goes for a boot, and he ends up hitting a cartwheel moonsault on the outside off the apron, which looked fucking badass. Buddy Matthews then gets pushed to the post, and then Andrade gets sent to the timekeeper's table, and then Andrade is on the top of the barricade. Andrade ends up going for the Hurricane Rana on Andrade goes for the Hurricane Rana. After that, Andrade sends Buddy back into the ring, and he goes for the cover and a near fall. Andrade goes to the top, but then Buddy Matthews comes in. Buddy Matthews then proceeds to pull the arm of Andrade on the post. Andrade then gets shoved to the barricade, and he goes to the top, and he ends up hitting a furious Meteora. And he goes for the cover and a near fall. During the commercial break, both men are getting attended by medical personnel. So during this whole match, during the commercial break, I was just so worried. I'm like, oh my God, do not tell me that both of these men are injured. But once we're back from break, Andrade looks like he's okay. He's on the outside. Andrade comes back into the ring. We get a series of kicks by Buddy. We then get repeated boots by Buddy on Andrade. Andrade immediately goes for a series of dragon screws on Buddy Matthews. And when I tell you these were serious dragon screws, these were serious dragon screws. Andrade then takes down Buddy Matthews. Andrade gets up, and he ends up going for the double moonsault. After that, he goes for the cover and a near fall. Andrade takes Buddy and gets sent to the apron, but then Buddy goes for the DDT. After that, we get a cover by Buddy Matthews and a near fall. Buddy then goes to the top, but then Andrade goes for the chop on Buddy, but then Andrade goes up onto the second rope, and then he ends up going for the sunset flip, but then his knee gave out. After that, Buddy ends up going for the thrust kick, and then he takes Andrade up, and the knee once again gives out from Buddy Matthews. Andrade ends up hitting a furious And I mentioned this at the top when I was talking about this match. That back elbow was insane. Tranquilo Club put it at best. Fuck the Judas effect. After that back elbow, he runs into a dropkick by Buddy Matthews. We get a cover engineer fall. Buddy Matthews then applies a submission on Andrade. And after that, Andrade drives him to the barricade. And then, he drives him to the turnbuckles, my bad. And then Andrade applies the figure 4 leg lock. Andrade then gets up on his back while he has the figure 4 applied. Buddy ends up tapping out, and Andrade wins the match in his first match back in All Elite Wrestling. After that, Andrade tries to get him up, but then Buddy Matthews pushes Andrade because he is pissed off that he lost the match. And Andrade, all he wants to do is just show respect. He offers a handshake, and then the lights go out, and the crowd goes nuts. The light goes back on, and it's the House of Black. And what happens is, from behind, the House of Black end up hitting the discus lariat, that being Brody King, hitting the discus lariat on Andrade El Idolo. So it looks like we're going to be having a feud between Andrade and the House of Black. Sign me the fuck up. But overall thoughts on this match. This was absolutely phenomenal in my opinion. This was possibly one of the best matches. It's either this match or the main event that definitely stole the show in my opinion. Andrade looked absolutely phenomenal. Buddy Matthews looked phenomenal. As soon as they announced this match, you could already tell the caliber of the match that you were going to be getting on TNT. Like, this match was I don't want to say a technical masterpiece, but this was definitely a wrestling masterpiece as a whole. And Andrade looked great. Some of the spots were intense, but fantastic. They definitely made the match as realistic as they possibly can. And that is exactly what I enjoyed about this. We get a Scorpio Sky video package. Talks about how he's been watching for the perfect opportunity. Talks about how he's the future and present of AEW, and no one can beat him because he is on another level. Are you really? Are you on another level? Because you haven't been on television for like how many months? Whatever. Toni Nese is in the ring. And Jesus Christ, as soon as Toni Nese was in the ring, I'm like, bro, we are ready for a shit show. Talks about how he is a personal trainer, and he cannot sit in the back when he sees a crowd full of the fattest and disgusting trash that Chicago has to offer. He says, boo, boo, you're fat. But he has good news. He decided to take Collision down, and tonight we will be doing group training. Everybody stand up, reach up, and start with your stretches. And then God's favorite champion's music plays. Miro comes out and officially makes his return. So we got Miro versus Toni Nese. We get a bunch of welcome back chants by the crowd, which was great to hear. Toni Nese tries to retreat to the outside. We get an overhand shot by Nese on Miro. So the good thing about this is you would think that this would be a squash match, and in reality, it was a squash match, but Toni Nese did get some offense in this match, and that's what I like about AEW, because usually when it comes to WWE matches, primarily regarding a lot of jobbers, the jobbers, of course, don't really get offense at all, and it's really the guy that's just doing the squashes. But in AEW, when it comes to matches like this, the opponent actually tries to get in some sort of offense in. So the crowd is going crazy. Miro fights back with a couple of body shots and repeated right hands. He sends Nese into the corner. Miro goes for a lariat. After that, Miro goes for repeated shots onto the chest of Nese, and then Nese fights back, and then he uses the ring ropes as a weapon. He goes to the top, and he ends up hitting a crossbody, but got caught. Miro hits the follow-away slam, but then smart Mark Sterling is on the apron. Miro hits a right hand, and then we get a roll-up by Nese, and then we get a spinning kick by Nese, but then Miro no-sells a couple of shots by Nese. After that, Miro plants him down, and he goes for the running pump kick, and he says, game over, and he applies the camel clutch. And what happens? Miro beats Toni Nese in his first match back in AEW, I believe, since All Out of last year. Great. Let's see what they're going to be doing with Miro, man, because Miro has been one of, when he was the TNT champion back in late 2021, man, that was a fantastic run regardless. And hopefully they can do something similar to that with Miro right now, but I don't know, man. We're going to have to wait and see. But as of right now, though, Miro is super over with the audience, and you love to see it. After that, We got Toni Storm and Ruby Soho of the Outcast taking on Willow, Nightingale, and Sky Blue. Overall, great match regardless. I loved it. Ruby Soho and Toni Storm go after both baby faces. We get a snap suplex by Storm on Sky onto the outside. Sky Blue's mom slaps both heels, and Willow pounces Ruby onto the guardrail, but then Sky goes for a Hurricane Rana onto the outside. At this point, the bell rings. Willow goes for the hip attack, and then we get a boot by Willow Nightingale, followed by a crossbody by Willow, and then we get a cover and an ear fall. We get a chop by Willow, followed by a clothesline. Toni Storm at this point gets involved, and then we get repeated rights by Ruby Soho. Once we're back from break, both Willow and Ruby exchange shots. Then we get a clothesline by Willow. At this point, the hot tag is made. Sky goes after Toni Storm. And then we get the hit scissors by Sky, and then we get a running knee takedown, and we get a spinning kick by Sky Blue. Sky then gets taken to the apron, and then she goes for the high kick, and then she goes to the top. She ends up hitting the crossbody, and we get a cover and an ear fall. Willow Nightingale then comes in, and then she hits the spine buster. We then get the shotgun dropkick by Storm, but then Storm applies the cloverleaf. Sky gets her hand onto the bottom rope. We then get a jackknife pin by Sky, and then we get a near fall. Willow tags in. Willow drops Storm down, but then Ruby comes in. She ends up hitting the kick, and then Sky makes the tag. We then get the German suplex by Storm, but then we get the hip attack by Toni Storm, followed by the running hip attack by Toni into the corner. And then we get a right hand by Ruby, but then Storm gets the spray paint. Toni sprays Ruby by accident, and after that, Willow picks up Storm, drops her down. Sky ends up going for the Code Blue, which is basically her own version of the Canadian Destroyer, and we get a cover, and the babyfaces get the win. Great match nonetheless. Great way to showcase Sky Blue. You can definitely tell AEW is definitely high and invested on Sky Blue because the talent that she has is absolutely tremendous, and she definitely showcased that on Dynamite as well as on Collision tonight. So good job, and Sky Blue and Willow Nightingale beat the Outcasts. We got a video package of Ricky Starks. He says he is officially in the Owen Hart Cup tournament, and he will be the next winner. What better place to do it in Canada because the tournament is meant for him. After that, we get a video package of Jeff Jarrett. Talks about how he will be facing Mark Briscoe in a concession stand brawl on Dynamite this coming Wednesday. After that, Tony Schiavone is in the ring, and he interviews the Acclaimed. Daddy Ass looks marvelous. This is such a special night as he got his new scissor outfit, but the last couple of weeks have been straining. The trios titles isn't out of the picture, but they will get back on track. Bowen says that they will, AEW now stands for Acclaimed every Wednesday, but also Acclaimed every weekend. And since they love us so much, they will stick around for Dynamite as well. Bowen then says they will do it for the first ever Collision Scissor, and then they will do it in Chicago, the city that made the People's Choice. And in Chicago, everybody loves the Acclaimed, and every member of the Acclaimed, that being Anthony Bowens, Max Caster, and Billy Gunn, all scissor each other alongside Tony Schiavone, so you love to see it. But moving on after that, we got our main event. CM Punk and FTR. CMFTR. I got to get me a CMFTR shirt. Bro, after this show, I'm going to be going on a shopping spree on shopaew.com. I'm going to be getting a CM Punk First Dance shirt, the original actual CM Punk shirt that he came when he first debuted in AEW. I actually have that shirt, but I don't have it with the stripes. I actually want it with the black, outline to it. Also, the CMFTR shirt, I believe there's two out there. And also the new shirt, which is a white shirt with the picture of Larry on it, which is a nod to, I believe, one of the old shirts that Roddy Piper had back in the 80s. So that was great to see as well. So I'm probably going to be going on a shopping spree for that. But CMFTR is fully reunited, and they will be taking on Bullet Club Gold's Switchblade Jay White and Juice Robinson and the current Ring of Honor World Television Champion Samoa Joe. And overall thoughts on this match, man. This was fucking awesome. This was awesome. Primarily regarding Samoa Joe and CM Punk. As soon as CM Punk tagged in and Samoa Joe tagged in, shit was about to get real. That is basically what happened. Shit was about to get real. Holy shit. But I'm going to be going through the match, and I'll be giving you guys my thoughts on what we are possibly going to be seeing later on. So, the match starts. Dax Harwood and Jay White start. So, it's a very fast-paced start in the beginning. Very fast-paced. Both men lock up. We get a bunch of CMFTR chants by the crowd in Chicago. You absolutely love to see it. We get a shoulder tackle by Dax. Then we get a roll-up by Dax, and then we get a near fall. We get a chop by Jay White, followed by a chop again by Jay White, but then we get a chop by Dax into the corner. Keep in mind, this match lasted roughly around, I believe, like 20-something minutes, so they had plenty of time in this match, and I believe it went through like 2 or 3 commercial breaks. So we get a clothesline into the corner by Dax, and then we get another. Dax goes for the lariat, and then he tries to go and apply the sharpshooter, but then Jay White retreats. Juice Robinson makes the tag. Juice goes after Dax. Juice is in control, but then what happens? Dax fires with a couple of chops. Cash Wheeler makes the tag, and he goes for a series of drop kicks. And you can definitely say, man, the MVP of this whole match was Cash Wheeler. Cash Wheeler is so fucking good, man. He was just so fast-paced in this match. It was like unlike anything I've ever seen in my life. And I've watched plenty of FTR matches. Like, bro, holy shit. We get a backslide by Cash and a near fall. We then get a shoulder tackle by Cash, and then we get a slam by Juice Robinson, and then we get a shoulder tackle by Juice, and then another. Cash picks up Juice, and then Juice gets slammed down. Dax Harwood makes the tag, and then what happens is Dax Harwood tags CM Punk. CM Punk tags in. Punk and Dax take Juice Robinson, and basically they pick up Juice Robinson, and they place him on Cash, because Cash is, I believe, on the second rope or on the top rope, and Cash goes for a slam off the top. I love CMFTR, man. They're probably like my favorite thing in AEW. Holy fucking shit. After that, we get a cover by Punk and a near fall. Punk tries to go for the GTS, but then Juice Robinson escapes and he retreats to his corner. And what happens? Juice Robinson makes the tag, and it ain't with Jay White. It's with Samoa Joe. And when Joe tagged in, this crowd went ballistic because the crowd in Chicago knows the history between these two men. The legendary trilogy that both of these men had in Ring of Honor. I believe 2 of their matches were 60-minute time limits draws. And, bro, when Joe tagged in, holy fucking shit, bro. The crowd went apeshit. Punk and Joe face off. Both lock up. Joe immediately, this man immediately goes for a chop. And then he goes for a second chop. And then he goes for a third chop. And let me tell y'all, those 3 chops that Samoa Joe hit on CM Punk were loud as shit. They were so loud that when CM Punk tried to chop back at Samoa Joe, it wasn't even as loud as the chops that Joe hit on Punk. It was that impactful. Holy crap. Punk goes for the side headlock. And once we're back from break, Juice is in control over Dax Harwood, so both Juice Robinson and Dax Harwood are both men that are legal. Dax fights back on Juice Robinson, and then we get a right hand by Juice, knocking out Dax Harwood to the mat. Joe then tags in once again, and then we get repeated right hands by Joe on Dax. We get a series of body shots by Joe in the corner. Juice goes to the top, and then we get a double team by Jay White and Juice Robinson. He picks up Dax, and then Dax reverses it and hits a German suplex. Cash tags in. He goes after everybody, and then we get an uppercut by Cash on Juice. And then we get a roll-up by Cash and a near fall. Cash goes for repeated rights on Juice, and then Cash drops Juice down. We then get a cover and a near fall. Punk is on the second rope, and he ends up hitting the elbow drop. After that, we get a cover by Punk and a near fall. Punk ends up going for the backbreaker. Cash tags in. Once we're back from commercial break, Jay White is in control over Cash Wheeler. Cash gets his hand onto the ropes. Juice Robinson makes the tag. He goes for the slam, and after that, we get a cover by Juice and a near fall. We then get a backdrop by Juice Robinson on Cash, and then we get another cover and a near fall. Cash then gets sent into the corner, but then Joe makes the tag. We get repeated right hands by Joe. We get a back elbow by Joe, and then we got he follows up with an enziguri. And then we get a cover and a near fall when CM Punk interferes. After that, Jay White makes the tag. Then we get a series of chops by Jay White after that. Cash goes for the chop block, followed by a dragon screw. We then get a side slam by Cash. Jay White tags in. Cash Wheeler tries to tag in CM Punk, but then Punk finally makes the tag. He fights off both Juice Robinson and Jay White of Bullet Club Gold. He body slams White. He body slams Juice. He ends up going for the leg lariat. We then get the swinging neck breaker by Punk. After that, he goes for another swinging neck breaker on Jay White. And after that, we get the running knees into the corner by Punk. He follows up with a bulldog lariat combination on Bullet Club Gold. Fucking badass. Punk, of course, picks up Jay White. Jay White, though, gouges the eyes of CM Punk. Punk goes for the high kick on White, but then Punk goes to the top, and then Juice Robinson interferes and drops down CM Punk. Jay White then ends up hitting the Uranagi, his all-famous Uranagi, and then we get a cover into near fall. He sets up the Blade Runner, but Punk counters, and he hits a lariat. Cash takes Jay White to the top. We get a chop by Dax, but then Punk makes the tag. FTR end up hitting the Powerplex. Punk, meanwhile, is on the top, and he ends up hitting the elbow drop. Cash gets taken to the outside, but then we get a cover by Punk, and Juice makes the save. Joe tags in. Joe is on fire and goes for repeated right hands. Both Punk and Joe exchange shots. You'll love to see it. After that, we get a chop by Punk. Jay White comes in. FTR come in. Punk goes for a knee on Joe. He picks up Joe, but then Joe applies a sleeper. So basically, Punk tried to go for the GTS on Joe, but then Joe counters and transitions into a sleeper. And Cash spears White. Dax comes back, but then Juice tags in. And what happens is Punk actually was in the sleeper for a while, to the point where he actually went down to the mat, and it looked like Punk was going to pass out from the sleeper. But what happens is that Punk ends up going for the high kick, and then FTR end up hitting the big rig. Punk picks up Juice Robinson. He hits the GTS, and we get a cover. And CMFTR win the main event of the first ever Collision. Overall thoughts, holy shit, what a main event. What a main event, man. FTR looked absolutely phenomenal. CM Punk looked absolutely great. You know, he wasn't really wrestling a lot throughout the majority of this whole match, but when he stepped in that ring, he gave it 110% in my opinion. But really, everybody's going to be remembering this match for when Joe tagged in and Punk tagged in and both faced off. Years in the making. And honestly, when it comes to CM Punk and FTR, you know, I think they're going to be going on a run during Collision, of course, because let's be real, Collision is CM Punk's show. But when it comes to Samoa Joe, man, I genuinely believe the feud, or I should say, I don't even know if it is going to be a feud. I mean, them adding Samoa Joe was no coincidence. I think we are going to be getting a one-on-one match between CM Punk and Samoa Joe in the near future. When, you might add? I honestly, you know, a lot of people could be saying Forbidden Door. I made a bold prediction. Now, most likely this is not going to be happening. I think it's impossible for that to happen, but I may be totally wrong. But what if they ran it back at Death Before Dishonor? Because, of course, everybody remembers the trilogy that they had in Ring of Honor. So why not? They do it at Death Before Dishonor. That's just me. I may be totally wrong. But again, I think a one-on-one program to really kick things off with CM Punk, to really get him back on track, which he's already back on track as of right now. But if you really want to solidify CM Punk and his run to be as successful as it could possibly be, put him in a promo, in a program with Samoa Joe. And just the back and forth promos between these two men would be fucking gold at the end of the day. But that is just my suggestion. But nonetheless, this was absolutely fantastic and a great main event to tap off the premiere episode of AEW Collision. But yeah, that was my AEW Collision review from June 17th, 2023. Overall thoughts on the show, man. This show was phenomenal. I loved this show for what it was. It was a great show regardless. Everything from the presentation, the commentary, everything about this made it different from Dynamite. And that is what you want. Because if this show was exactly like Dynamite, what was really the whole point of watching this show? And this show did everything in its power to make it different from Dynamite. And hopefully, in the next couple of weeks, they continue on with that trend. Because at the end of the day, AEW and the fans, and myself, of course, that being a fan, wants this show to succeed. But yeah, that was my AEW Collision review from June 17th, 2023. Please like, subscribe, comment down below, push that bell for notifications, and be on the lookout for more videos right here on the WrestleHavoc Podcast, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content, and as the frickin' referee would say, ring, ring, ring that damn bell for more notifications. And as always, it is Flamin' Ricky DeRays, signing out.